A very warm welcome to yet another Kumekucha video. Information and analysis that is very difficult to find anywhere else. I recommend that you subscribe and you hit the bell button so that you receive notifications every time I have a new video. Karibu sana and enjoy. Unfortunately, to many Kenyans, women are to be seen and not to be heard. Women are flowers to be admired, but never to be heard. To others, women are toys. These views, of course, are very unfortunate, but they are widespread in Kenya. And unfortunately, very unfortunately, some women, younger women in our country, Kenya, have started to half believe this perception. And yet the truth is, women have contributed a lot to a better Kenya, much more than most Kenyans realize. Now, before you click off and go and watch another video, because this video is boring, you think, let me just make one statement. Stick around. This is one of the most interesting videos you've ever watched on this channel. Trust me. We will talk about how women stripped naked. I mean naked kabisa at Uhuru Park, in Nairobi. And I have photographic proof. And then we'll talk about a truly giant of a politician, a woman. A woman who defied Jomo Kenyatta and Daniel Toroitich arap Moi, their dictatorial tendencies, for a better Kenya. And for a long time held the distinction of being the youngest ever Kenyan to be elected into parliament at the age of 24. She held that distinction until August 2017, when a 23-year-old man, Paul Mwirigi, was elected. But she's still the youngest ever woman to be elected into parliament. Antenna from a very conservative constituency, one of the most difficult, in my view, to win in the Rift Valley. So stick around. There's a lot here. Okay, and let's get started right away. The history of the fight for a better Kenya has got very many women. But sadly, they remain completely unrecognized. They remain great unsung heroines of our beloved Kenya. And let us start with the very first Kenyan, to resist the colonialists. Indeed, the very first Kenyan freedom fighter. Now, kindly note, I didn't say woman. I said the first Kenyan. Because the first Kenyan freedom fighter was actually a woman. People of flower manenos, to be seen and not heard, poleni sana. These are facts. I've not cooked this. I talked about this great woman in an earlier video. And I'll just very quickly play that clip of what I said. Here it is. Who was Metakilili Wamenza? Actually, she was a Giriama freedom fighter. While Giriama men were cowering under beds, Mekatilili stood up to the colonialists, to the white Mzungus. And in one very heated exchange, with the Mzungu administrator, she slapped him. Now, in my view, had she been a man, I don't think she'd have lived to have that reputation amongst the Giriama people. And although the Brits can be very brutal, they're gentlemen. When it comes to ladies, women, and children, they hold their horses. Ama wanaweka break, if you want to put it like that. Anyway, she ended up being put into jail. In fact, she was exiled all the way to Mumias in Western Kenya. Now, the story goes, she escaped. Gosh, this was one tough woman. Not only did she escape from the British jail, but she walked all the way from Mumias back to her native Kilifi. That is over 1,000 kilometers. Mekatilili died in 1924, and of course left quite a reputation as one of the really great Kenyans, people who fought and resisted colonial rule. The next great Kenyan woman I want to highlight in this video is also the first ever African woman to win the Nobel Peace Prize. Her name was Wangari Maathai. Wangari Maathai was also the first ever female professor in the country called Kenya. And so it is in order to address her, the late professor, in the right manner. Professor Wangari Maathai did very many things that will definitely stand the test of time. She did very many things towards the fight for a better Kenya, and she was fearless. When draconian Daniel Toroitich arap Moi, in the 80s, had managed to cower every single man in the country, when no man could dare stand up to Moi, even as the country continued to go to the dogs, history repeated itself. Once again, there was a woman who could stand up to be counted. In the 1800s, as we've just seen, it was Mekatilili Wamenza. In the 70s, it was somebody else I'll talk about in a moment. And in the 90s, it was Wangari Maathai. To do justice to the achievements of this great Kenyan woman would need a minimum of a 2-hour video. Oh yes, I kid you not. But today, let me just highlight how she saved Uhuru Park. Yes, Uhuru Park was going. Kwanza ilikuwa imeenda tayari. Some foreign investors, mostly from the United Kingdom, had plotted to build a brand new skyscraper where Uhuru Park stands today. These investors were led by a man you may have heard of called Robert Maxwell. Maxwell was a billionaire publisher who later on committed suicide. He had already invested heavily in the then Kano newspaper, Kenya Times, and he planned to invest even more heavily by putting up this structure. I believe it was going to be called the Times Towers or something. And it was going to be the tallest building, taller even than KICC is today. And Kanu lied to Kenyans that the park would be retained, which of course made no sense. How do you put up a building right in the middle of a park and you maintain the park as it is? How? It doesn't make any sense, especially a building of that magnitude. But Wangari Maathai was there, and she stood up and she said, no, this building is not going to go up. She was of course an authority on the environment, because she had an NGO, and so even the Kenyans who were doubtful knew that the professor knew what she was talking about. When the Kanu mandarins heard that their great project, of course they were already salivating with the corruption money they were going to pocket. When they heard that a woman is opposing this development, in quotes, they didn't know what to make of it. And finally, they dismissed her as a mad woman who could not even keep a husband. Lakini, walijua ile walikuwa wajui. Professor Maathai organized for a small group to keep vigil at Uhuru Park. And this group grew and grew gradually. And even as the government now started thinking about how to break up this group that had pitched camp at Uhuru Park, 6 of the women, with the support of the professor of course, decided to escalate things. They decided to strip naked. Now in the African custom, when your mother strips naked, it is the worst curse you can ever receive. And these were not young women. They included the mother of another great Kenyan freedom fighter, whom Kenyans ignore these days, a man called Koigi wa Wamwere. Monica Wangu Wamwere, that was her name, was protesting, apart from the building of this structure at Uhuru Park, was protesting the detention without trial of her 2 sons, Koigi Wamwere and his brother Charles Kuria Wamwere, who had been detained in 1990 by the draconian Moi regime without trial. Some of the women half-stripped, but some women in the group, birthday suit. Yani vile walizaliwa. Loose translation, the way they were born. completely stark naked. Now, brutal riot police was sent in to break up the group. But when they arrived and saw the nakedness of these women, they took off. They ran away. The long and short of this drama, the investors ended up getting cold feet, and that building never went up. Victory. But even more significant, this was the beginning of the heightened struggle for multi-party democracy in Kenya. And no matter how you want to look at it, there is no way you can downplay the role of Professor Wangari Maathai. Now, very interesting, this was not actually the first time in Kenya that the country had witnessed stripping of women for political protest. On March 16, 1922, a woman called Mary Muthoni Nyanjiru stripped naked to demand the release of freedom fighter Harry Thuku. Yeah, this happened along the road that is called by the same name today. The response of the colonial government at that time, who have no idea about African Kshs, etc., etc., they shot her dead. So next time you hear a man saying, "Where were you women when we were fighting for independence?" just tell him, "Go tell that to the birds." Now, this last woman, I believe, was even more interesting. I believe the most interesting. And I was very lucky because I had the pleasure of meeting her under the most, shall I say, strange, bizarre circumstances. I met her in 1985 at the tail end of her great political career. And I was very young in those days. I just completed school, high school, and I was still trying to find myself. I was a very heavy drinker. Now, one of my favorite joints was a place not very far from where I lived at the time, and it was called the GVC Club, Green Valley Club. Now, this club at the time, there were not many in Nairobi. This club attracted people from every corner of Nairobi. The gathering there was what we used to call in those days mchanganyiko maalum. Loose translation, a mixture of everything. From the richest to the poorest to the middle income, to politicians, to nobodies, to people like Chris who had just left school, etc., etc. And I walked in one day and sat at the counter. Now, in those days, there were not too many conmen or people with evil intentions, and therefore, it was very common to just start a conversation. And so this very heavily built woman, who was seated on the stool next to me, started a conversation. And we talked for quite a while. And I told her I had absolutely zero interest in Kenyan politics. Of course, at the time, I was very closely following American politics. Kwani America ilikuwa mama yangu. Anyway, she seemed to be very knowledgeable on Kenyan politics. And also, she was talking about Kenyan politics in a different way. Very late in that conversation, we introduced each other. And she said, "My name is Chelagat Mutai." And I laughed. That was a very funny joke. Because everybody in Kenya knew who Chelagat Mutai was. Even people who were following American politics. She would often be referred to as Yule Mwanamuke Mwanaume. Loose translation, the woman who is a man. She had defied the Moi regime, which was nothing, because the worst Moi would do to you would be to put you in detention without trial. What had really gotten her reputation is that she had defied the Kiambu Mafia and the murderous government of Jomo Kenyatta. Because Jomo Kenyatta's preferred way of dealing with opponents to the government or nuisances to the government was the 6 feet under method. You'd end up dead. But this was a woman who stood up to Jomo Kenyatta. Yes, she had fully earned her name of Mwanamke Mwanaume. She had done what the vast majority of men, even from her native Nandi, where they were real men, would do. And so after quite a bit of convincing that day at the GVC club, I finally realized that I was seated right next to one of the most important Kenyan political figures of this century. I kick myself today that in those days I had absolutely zero interest in Kenyan politics, because I believe I would have learnt a lot. Now, who was Chelagat Mutai? Let's quickly go through her life. Now, very interesting, Chelagat Mutai, Philomena Chelagat Mutai, or her full names, is most remembered for her political stand on, wait for this one, political assassinations, land grabbing, and corruption. Now, you know, if you touch a live wire, you'll get electrocuted, most probably to death. And if you understand Kenyan politics, those are the three topics, if you wanted to touch them during the Jomo Kenyatta administration, you would be touching more than a live wire. But these were the pet subjects of this great Kenyan. Chelagat Mutai was born in 1949 in Terige, Lesos, Nandi. And she was born to be a politician because very early on, during her high school days at Highlands Girls' School, which is today called Moi Girls Eldoret, she was expelled. And she was expelled for leading a student strike at the school. So she had to sit her exams outside the school. But she still passed with flying colors and was admitted at the University of Nairobi to study political science. And she promptly became a student leader. Now, 6 months after she graduated, she vied for the Eldoret North parliamentary seat. Now, you will remember that the Eldoret North seat is the seat that this man called WSR used to hold. Yeah. Deputy President William Samoei Ruto was a member of Parliament of Eldoret North. This seat is at the heart of Nandi politics, therefore very difficult to win, let alone imagining that a woman could win it, and not even today. In 1974, and there's more, she was only 24 years old. And she became the youngest ever Kenyan to enter parliament. Not youngest woman, youngest ever Kenyan to enter parliament. And she held this distinction until the recently concluded general elections, the elections we had just the other day, in August 2017, when a 23-year-old man, Paul Mwirigi, was elected. Now she burst into national politics, not just local Eldoret North politics, when she joined a group of other politicians in parliament who were the only opposition at the time. This very vocal small group of legislators were called the Seven Bearded Sisters by the then AG Charles Njonjo. These were Martin Shikuku, these were all great legendary Kenyans. Martin Shikuku, Dr. Chibule Wasuma, Lawrence Sifuna, father of the ODM Sifuna, Abuya, George Anyona, James Orengo, whom we all know, and of course Koigi Wawomere. While fighting for squatters in her constituency, she was prosecuted for incitement and she was jailed in 1976. And while she served her 2.5 years in prison, she lost her parliamentary seat. She was released in 1978 after the death in August of Jomo Kenyatta. And in the next elections, which was the following year in 1979, she beat the incumbent, Nicanor Sirma, and recaptured her parliamentary seat. And prison had not tamed her because she continued where she left off. This time, standing up to the draconian Moi government. And in 1981, when she learned there was a plan to send her to detention without trial, she fled the country and went to Tanzania. She returned in 1984 to take care of her then ailing mother. But she stayed out of politics, and of course I met her that day at the GVC in 1985. In 2006, Chelagat Mutai was involved in a very serious road accident that confined her to a wheelchair. She spent the next years of her life on a wheelchair and lived in dire poverty. And this situation was highlighted in 2011 when Raila Odinga visited her. She died sick, alone and forgotten by Kenyans on June 2013. I take my hat off to Chelagat Mutai. I take my hat off for the great Kenyan women who have done so much for this great country. They are forgotten. Nobody talks about them. We prefer to talk about breaking the law and ignoring the gender rule in our constitution. But on this channel, we choose to remember them. On this channel, we treasure them as great Kenyans who have done great things to make Kenya a better country. Let this video inspire all those women out there sitting on their great potential. Your country needs you very, very badly, especially now. And to women voters, the next time a woman vies for any political seat, don't start looking at what she's wearing. Fight your instincts as a woman, and cast your vote to elect a fellow woman for a better Kenya. Until next time, this is Kshs, Kumekucha.
Kenya inchi yangu, Kenya inchi yangu iliyo uhuru. Inchi iliyo uhuru, toka sasa mpaka milele. Kenya inchi yangu, Kenya inchi yangu naishelea. Katika maisha na nguvu zangu sote, Kenya inchi yetu ya kibinadamu.